Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of It's Just Feminism, where we try to answer some simple yet complicated questions like what is feminism, who are feminists, what do feminists do, and can feminism actually change the world? Well, the guest of this series will show by example. Not only does feminism have potential to change the world, they're actively doing it. My name is Aurora, I'll be your host, and joining me today is Kristina to talk about her upcoming áyA ComicCon happening in Denver in just a week from the day you're watching this. I'm really excited to learn more from her about the ways that she made sure to make this con as accessible and as safe for as many different communities. So before we get into it, I just want to remind you that this is a safe space too, so no type of hate or violence is, tolerated, but you're more than welcome to share your own thoughts and opinions, your experiences of going to Comic Cons. If you happen to go to the con and see this afterwards, maybe let us know how it was. And I hope that next year that con will be even greater, even bigger, and that more of us will get a chance to actually attend it. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the video. Thank you, Kristina, for being here today with me. Oh, and if you enjoy watching this, make sure to leave a like and also subscribe so you don't miss on any future episodes. Now let's get into it. Well, thank you so much once again for being here today to talk about your upcoming Comic-Con that will be happening a week after this episode goes live. I bet you're very excited about it.
We've got a lot of cool things happening this year. This is our second year and it's really taken off. So I'm really excited about everything we've got going on.
It's amazing. So can you tell us for start a bit more about yourself before we get into the Comic-Con itself?
My name's Kristina Maldonado-Badhand. I'm Chichangu, Lakota, and Cherokee. And I was born in Taos, New Mexico, but then I came to Denver for college and kind of stayed here. My dad thinks it's actually really funny because all of my siblings were actually born in Denver. Him and my mom got married and really started their life here in Denver, moved to Taos, had me. And then everybody stayed in Taos and I came back to Denver as soon as I got the opportunity to. So he finds that kind of hilarious. Artist, graphic designer, illustrator, obviously do some comic books and do a lot around the community with Native community and just the local Denver creative community, storytelling and creating all kinds of different stuff. I wear a lot of hats. I used to be on the Denver American Indian Commission and was the co-chair of that for a while. So I've been around Denver and kind of heavily involved in the community here for a long time. And I met my husband actually at a drink and draw, also with other comic artists. And we've been together, it'll actually be 10 years next year that we've been dating, and we've been married for 7.
Oh, that's amazing.
Anniversary is actually Monday, so.
Oh, wow, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
So the Comic-Con will be kind of your celebration with the whole community.
Yeah.
So you're very creative, very passionate, and comic books and comics and Comic-Cons are integral to your life. So how did that love for comics started, and how did it then turn into the Comic-Con that you're doing right now?
So I was dyslexic, still have some dyslexia when it comes to numbers, but growing up, I didn't actually learn how to read until I was about 10. And so comics were just kind of a way that I could still read books without actually being able to read the words. And so they were kind of really important to me. ElfQuest was a really big one. I read a lot of ElfQuest when I was like 8 years old, which is not really appropriate for an 8-year-old. But whatever, it was a great story, and a lot of good things came from that. I actually got a chance to meet the Pennies, Wendy and Richard, and I've done a couple projects with them. I'm really happy to have a relationship with them now. It's really cool to be able to just message them if I have a question. It's been a really big thing for me because ElfQuest was really important to me growing up, and my sister and my brother were also, we had our little ElfQuest club where we'd read the new issues, and it's kind of a big deal. My favorite superhero is Wolverine. So I started reading Wolverine comics because there's a comic where he battles in Shagula, which is Lakota sea monster. It's a bastardized version of Shagula, and the comic is not at all. It's just not good actually. But at 8 years old, I thought it was amazing because it had in parentheses speaking Lakota. And I was like, oh, the superhero is speaking my language, and that's really cool. I love how resilient he is. And then My husband actually found the comic a few years ago and got it for me. And I was like, oh, this is so bad. Like, it's so bad. Just not, no, there's so much wrong with it. So we've actually joked about, and kind of serious joked about redoing it from like an actual Lakota person and, you know, like redoing the whole story so that it is better the way they represent everything. Comics have always been kind of a big deal for me. I got started with Pop Culture Classroom here in Denver. Used to be Comic Book Classroom. They started the Denver Comic Con. I started volunteering there when they had the first Denver Comic Con, and that was kind of my introduction into teaching. I was in their kids corral area, and I had 25 5-year-olds, all of which wanted to draw different superheroes. My co-volunteer kind of went to the bathroom and never came back. I ended up with all of them, and I had a little girl who decided to help me. And she was my little helper. I called her Princess Hulk because she had these Hulk hands and like a pink and a purple and green tutu. It was hilarious. She was a really good helper and helped me kind of coordinate all of these little 5-year-olds. And right after that, I started working with Pop Culture Classroom, doing more with Denver Comic Con. And so the following year, I came back as a volunteer working with Pop Culture Classroom and was headed to the restroom, and I saw this sign that said Indigenous Comics. And so I like stopped and I went to talk to the people who were there, and that was Dr. Lee Francis. I basically was like, oh, you're looking for Native comic artists? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I'm a Native comic artist. And he's like, oh, that's great. We want you. And I was like, awesome. I have to pee. And then I ran away. So I really had to go to the bathroom. So then I came back like 2 hours later with my portfolio and showed him my artwork and started collaborating with them, and did a couple of comic covers and came on as kind of an editor for some of the comics, and did my own comic, which was called Cowie. It was a take on Polynesian Beauty and the Beast. And we did a single issue of that. I learned a lot with that project. I'm trying to come out with a graphic novel for it. And it's been kind of a turbulent road, but it will come out at some point. And basically, Lee started the Indigenous Comic Con in Albuquerque. And I think it was 2016 is when the first year was, in November. And it was just awesome. It was a really great experience. Everybody really loved being able to come together as Indigenous comic artists and kind of show our culture in a different light from like, you know, a pop culture standpoint. And so that continued to happen for a few years. And then one of the artists who also lived in Denver with me and was a Native comic artist, he suggested that we bring it here to Denver. And I was like, yeah, I'm on the commission, so I can talk to the Denver American Indian Commission, and, you know, maybe we can have it here. So I invited Lee to present to everybody, and everybody loved the idea. And then they were like, okay, cool, Kristina's running it. And I was like, I'm what? Like, I got totally voluntold into that role. That was not something I was expecting to happen. I just thought I was going to connect the bridges. After that conversation, we had Indigenous PopX here in 2019. Went really well, but IndigiPopX is now in Oklahoma. So Lee took the show to Oklahoma City, and that's where they've been since, able to have the show again since 2021. And my husband and I talked about doing one here that was áyA. So it was still an Indigenous Comic and Arts Festival, but what we really wanted was to open it up to other cultures. Because when we have only Indigenous or Native events, then we're not actually sharing that perspective very much. And it's great to have like some attendees come, but then we kind of felt like that still had this barrier of Native people being the dancers, the performers, not actually being able to have creative conversations with them and be able to share perspectives and learn more about tribes and really how many tribes there are in the United States. And so we started áyA. It was supposed to happen in 2020, and we all know how that happened. So then last year ended up being our first year. And so what áyA really is it's a multicultural festival hosted by North American Indigenous people. And we drive people over to IPX as much as we can. So we're if you want to see a real Indigenous Comic-Con, go to Indigenous PopX. But if you want a multicultural festival that centers Indigenous voices, you come to áyA. because we really accept all kinds of vendors. And our big thing is really telling everybody to connect to where their Indigenous roots are, because all of us are Indigenous from someplace. We're Indigenous from North America. Here we have, like Native American, Mexican, and First Nations is really what we try to center, because áyA is here. But we encourage all of our vendors to be like, if you have a Celtic story, yes, have all of these fairy tales and stuff that came from your own culture. We want to see it. We want to see you create that and basically connect to that, because we kind of feel that cultural appropriation tends to happen because people feel that hole. Like there's displacement is common in this country. And in order to fill that hole, sometimes people find things that they like or things that resonate with them, and then they try to possess it and they try to fill that hole. And they don't necessarily mean to or realize that possessing that is actually not the way you handle that culture, and it causes all kinds of like issues, but what's causing that hole is your disconnect, your inability to like know where you really come from. And even natives have that, everybody's displaced. There's a lot of historical trauma, familial trauma, and things that just kind of cause this hole that people are constantly trying to fill with like things that they resonate with and things that make them feel like they belong. áyA is meant to be that place of connection and that place of conversation, so you can figure out where you really belong, and you can figure out like how to move forward from that to a place of better healing and better representation through pop culture, and kind of connecting through the things we all love, which is being a nerd, and also like celebrating, being different and having different cultures.
I love it. I mean, that's beautiful. I love that collaboration and dialogue is in the focus of it all, because that's how we can actually learn and grow and meet other cultures and meet our own cultures and give it all a space that it actually deserves. And it's not taking away from somebody else's space. The stage is widening itself so that everybody can fit into it. It's not like somebody's trying to push somebody off the stage. Like, everybody deserves to be there, and everybody deserves to have their fairy tales, their folk stories recognized and celebrated, and not appropriated and stolen or whitewashed or whatever Western culture decides to do with it to make it more profitable or palatable or whatever. So I love that you're showing another way of how it can all be done. And I also love that, going for a P practically changed your life. It streamlined into a specific direction. So that's that's a very interesting background story.
You gotta grab opportunities when you see them, even if you have to go to the bathroom. It kind of was like stepping stones. It just like worked out pretty well from volunteering. So that's actually, with our con, I'm always encouraging people to volunteer and to try out like different roles of the con, because you never know who you might meet. You never know like what conversation might happen. So usually with our volunteers, I try to move them around the floor. They might be in with the panelists, so they might talk to like some of the panelists and learn some things there. I really love synergies. I love when people's like projects align and like things just kind of connect. And so our volunteers are kind of bounced all over the place. They have like a time at the volunteer booth. They have time at like the panel booth. They're going to have a chance to go into some of the performances. Like, they can kind of sign up to where they want to go. But a lot of that was my own experience. Volunteering really put me on a really cool path. And I wouldn't have expected that at like 19. I was just like, oh yeah, I want to get in free to the Comic-Con. That was basically my thought process. Was like, yeah, and just work like 2 hours and I get free tickets to Denver Comic-Con. That sounds great. But then it also put me on a path of being like an educator and working with youth. And so uplifting other artists and uplifting youth is also a really big part of áyA. And our bigger nonprofit, which is Create áyA, is all about kind of giving those young artists opportunities and being able to share that with people so that they also don't make mistakes that I made. Because like I said, I had a lot of learning with Cowie, and it's been a process. My husband's had his moments too, where it's just like all kinds of learning things that you learn when you're a vendor without having that guidance. So we have something called the Novice Artist Program that helps aspiring artists, ages, like all ages basically, to have a vending booth for the first time, and then also be able to do kind of some professional guidance on what best vending practices are, But again, I'm not the like end all be all of the words of being a vendor. So I encourage them to talk to our other vendors, like learn what they might recommend in terms of pricing or in terms of experiences that they've had. I just kind of give the guidelines of like, this is what I've learned. This is what we know of like, taxes and basically how you price things, the importance of pricing your work with value, because you are supposed to value yourself as an artist because your artwork has value, and really just how to kind of display. And so that program I actually started during Indigenous PopX. And then in our first year for áyA last year, we had about 12 artists, all ranging from like 12 to like 84. And so that's the ages that they were. And some of them really took the opportunity and went to really great places. I had an artist who she priced herself really, really high. And she didn't really sell much during áyA, but right afterwards, she got some really great commissions, and she's been doing a lot of museum work, which is what she was really looking for, and been all over the place. She's doing really successful. And then a lot of our other artists are returning as vendors this year, so they liked it. So they're coming back as vendors. And this year we have 14 artists, ages 13 through 54. And I'm really excited to see all of them. Their work is amazing. I'm actually going to end up broke just based on their tables, because we had obviously our meeting to go through all of their stock. And I was like, I want that sticker, I want that print, and I want that bag. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to end up spending all my money on just you guys, never mind the other 100 vendors that we have. Like, I think that's the hardest part for me as an organizer is I want everybody's stuff. That will just break me. I won't be able to afford anything like my rent. So that's the really hard part with being an organizer, I think.
Yeah, but the reason why it's hard is because you love it so much. The event is something that you created, is something that you yourself would like to attend, and that creates a different perspective. You're inside of it, you're living it. So it's amazing that you're so passionate about it, and it's also giving confidence to those vendors, those young and elderly people who are turning to their passions, to their hobbies, and trying to make them into something more. And also the fact that you're trying to help them price right, because we have that myth of a struggling artist, an artist who is always broke, who is always hungry, and who is struggling about a roof over his head, and that shouldn't be the case. Like, people in art should also deserve the same steadiness of life and same quality of life as anybody else in any field, for that matter. Like, we should all have that. So I love that you're giving them that information and confidence to actually think about what their talent and their effort and all that time. It takes so much time to create an artwork or a comic cover or something like that. So they deserve to be compensated for that. You mentioned that one of your hats is being an educator, so I guess that makes sense that one of the aspects of this ComicCon in Denver is the Youth and Educator program. So can you tell us a bit more about who is collaborating in that, what is the mission of it, and how can people apply for maybe next year to be a part of it?
Our community zone is actually full of booths that got the table for free. They're local organizations. We did put a couple vendors down there that just kind of seemed to fit with the community kind of aspect. They do a lot of work that's specific to community, whether it's curriculum design or health, food, things like that. So a lot of them you'll find in the community zone. It's the same application as it is for vendors. You just specify whether you're a community-based organization, and if you're a nonprofit, then you get the table comped. And basically how the Educators Day this year is working is it's really a time for schools and educators to be able to come and maybe learn some things and get some resources without the general public there. So it's still open to the general public to come. But I really tried to get schools involved and educators involved so that they can bring a field trip if they like. And we have a couple that are coming from out of town that are going to be looking really for that curriculum resource. And then all of the panels that we have happening on that day are very specific to helping people with that resource of whether it is, cultural education or how to make bridges to better improve your curriculum around Indigenous people or around people of color in general. Pop Culture Classroom is actually doing a panel. And then Meow Wolf is doing a panel for creating immersive spaces for education. We have a puppetry panel that's all about the art of puppetry and how it really expands cultures. So they'll be kind of talking about puppets in different cultures. Two of my vendors are actually puppet creators, and I have a novice artist that makes paper dragon puppets, and she's like 13, and she's amazing. Her dragon puppets are great. She actually inspired my son, who's 6, to make his own little paper puppets just after one conversation at a powwow. So I'm excited to see what she brings to áyACon. But all of those panels are based around that. We do have a performance that is done by Chima Tonali. They're an Aztec dance group. We really love to open up our festival with dancing. It's just a cultural thing. My husband is also Indigenous and Mexican Indigenous, so Aztec dancing is a really big thing to him. And so we usually try to open it up with powwow dancing or Aztec dancers, but they have the horn, and it's a great way for them to open. So the past couple of years we've opened with an Aztec dance group. And so Chima Tonali is going to be opening this year. We do have a sensory-friendly option if drums are too much for you, because my son is on the spectrum, and so we kind of thought about that as well. So while that performance is happening, there's also going to be a sensory-friendly art making activity that is done by another one of my novice artists. She's actually from Brazil, so she came in from Brazil just for áyACon and is kind of setting things up here in Denver. She somehow found us in Brazil. I don't really know how that happened, but she applied as a novice artist, and this will be her first show here in Denver. And she'll be doing that panel right at the beginning of the festival while the dancers are happening. And then the whole day is basically 12 to 5. And then we do have a kind of private event just to celebrate our vendors and our sponsors and our partners. That's happening right after that. We're also really passionate about taking care of our vendors, because if you don't have vendors, you don't have a show. And having been vendors ourselves, I'm always trying to make sure people have water, that they have food, because there's a lot of times I forget, a show gets crazy and you're like, oh, it's 4 o'clock and I did not drink any water today. I didn't eat anything. I'm ornery. I'm all kinds of grumpy because it's just been nonstop and you're just busy. And then that's also how you get sick. We have a thing called con crud that happens with Comic Cons, where just because you have so many people in one place, it's really easy to get a cold or to get the flu after a big event. And so food and water is the main thing for them. We have snacks and stuff, but that Friday night, that little event is basically to celebrate all the people who helped us create the festival. Because I may be the director and pulling all the strings behind, but without all those vendors and those sponsors and our partners and our community partners, like the city, we are part of a the Cultural Partnerships Program at the McNichols building. And without that, we wouldn't be able to afford the building. Without them being able to work with us, there's no way. There's no way our festival would be as well as it is. So that also might change because of the way the city is changing with the building. This might actually be their last year, because that building is just, the new mayor has plans for it. And we're celebrating the staff that has worked with us for the past 2 years and really made it possible at that dinner because of just so much help. They've just helped so much, and we'll see kind of what happens next year. But áyACon will continue wherever it ends up. This just might be our last year at McNichols building.
Oh, well, I hope that wherever the next location will be, it will be even greater, even more accessible for people to come from all over the place. Because, as you said, the world traveled all the way to Brazil, it also traveled to Canada. You're creating a buzz about this amazing project, so I love it, and I applaud you for being focused on the community, but on the community as a whole. So it's not just about the community of people who will come to the Comic-Con as visitors. It's not about the community of the people who just come as vendors, but you're also thinking about those people who are behind the scenes, the cleaners, the everybody else who is in that space and who is making sure that everything runs smoothly. So it's amazing that you're doing something for them too, and not just for the people who are bringing in the money or who are bringing in some type of buzz or whatever, but everybody who is included. And I believe that if more events were organized in that way, we would have less exploitation, we would have less issues with certain events, how they turn out and how people feel afterwards. Nobody would feel, as they were taken advantage of and stuff, or they gave more than they received. It should be a collaboration based on mutual, like, trust and celebration and support in all directions.
Especially because, you can't control the financial success of an event. So for us, it's like we at least want people to leave feeling appreciated and feel like, we fed them, we took care of them, they made some connections. So if worst case scenario, it was a show where people didn't spend a lot of money, they at least left feeling fed and appreciated, and they had the experience. And so, like, it's not a total loss. If you go to a show where you don't have those things, then you're really focusing on the fact, like, oh, I didn't make back my trip. I didn't make back my table. I'm out all this money. I had a really bad time. And it really can, like, cause a lot of turmoil in artists. And so since we can't control that, because unfortunately I'm not a millionaire and I can't buy everybody's stuff as much as I want to, that's the way that we can kind of remedy that, to make sure that they enjoy their time at áyA, is by building those connections and by taking care of them while they're there. And hopefully, like, we made it free to attend so everybody can come and, like, pay all their money to the vendors. Like, we are a nonprofit, so we don't really accept any payment from that. We're basically all operating off of sponsors and grants, because the experience is what's the most important thing to us.
I just wanted to ask you about that fact that it's free. Like, how did you manage to do it, considering it's in the US and the capitalism is raging hard, and specifically events are, like, the inflation in prices for many types of events, ComicCons included, are just skyrocketing. So what are some ways that you manage to make it affordable for you, and so that you're not also, like, bankrupting your nonprofit as well? Like, what are some tips and tricks that you might have for other people who might want to make a free event but don't know how to do it?
A lot of it is that building bridges with local community organizations, and also with the city. I think the fact that we're on that cultural partnership program, like I said, that the only way we can really do it is because they comp that building, because we're on that program. So it's like it's a great partnership. And without that, we wouldn't be able to afford that building. Also with that, they bring in a lot. They really support us. Without them, it wouldn't be as possible. Talking to cities and talking to, like, the commissions, if you have a cultural commission for whatever event you're doing, talk to them, because they have all of the connections, whether it is like public art funding or environmental funding, which was another one of our sponsors this year. We talked to some tribes, and we actually made a partnership with a tribe out in Florida. And they've been great. They've been a huge help for us the past 2 years, and they're coming out again this year. We've actually even talked about doing an áyA over in Florida, in their facility, because they have a great casino area, like a retail spot and all kinds of things. So we've been talking more about doing that, and just really following those connections with like-minded individuals. So like I said, I love synergies, and oftentimes I find that synergies happen when you're on the right path. So if people have the same idea as you, align with them, cooperate with them. We're always sending people to IndigiPopX because, it's similar to us, but not exactly the same kind of event. And if people love the Indigenous aspect of our con, then that's the next place to go. And so we're always encouraging other events. We have a lot of partnerships with local conventions as well. So we do events at, like, Colorado Festival of Horror. We just did that last weekend. We had a panel, kind of talked about áyA. We build with the Levitt Pavilion for concerts. So we were at a few of their concerts this summer, kind of supporting them, and also spreading out the word for áyA. We partnered with the Denver Art Museum, was at their powwow, and kind of spread words there. We just kind of share the love, and, like, also talk about ways that we can bring people in, so that it becomes, more than just our event. It becomes a community event. And then when it's a community event, more people than just you care about it. And so they're more likely to, rally behind you and try to make things happen for it to succeed. And so for nonprofits that are trying to make that happen, really make it so that it is something that the community is invested in, that they see the importance of it, and that they see that mutual beneficial relationship where, you're showing up to support them in the same way that they're there to support you.
I love it. Like, it's not a competition. It's not like, oh yes, we have our own Comic-Con in Denver, but they have their own Comic-Con in Florida, and we're in competition, and we have to make sure that we're better than them, and we can collaborate, we can share our secrets, our vendors, or whatever. When actually it's much better what you're doing with providing many opportunities for vendors to have more success, for people to see their stuff, and for people who are really into this passion to have more events to go to. Like, everybody's winning when we're not competing. So I love it.
Not everybody can travel states to go to events. So if you can have something local, then that's great. Like, we're all about helping other people who want to start their own cons with any information that we can have. Or I started a mailing list actually for all the vendors this year so that I can share opportunities, because there's also small festivals that happen that sometimes people don't get the notice about, and I'll get an email, and then this way with the vending list I can just send it out and be like, hey, so the Corn Festival is happening next weekend. They're looking for vendors. If you're local to Denver, go pop over there for a day and see if you make something. That fills their event with vendors, and it also gives the vendors more opportunities to make more money and to maybe not have to travel as much, because a lot of vendors, they go off of the big shows, and those big shows are sometimes scattered all over the place. So you're traveling from like New Mexico to Arizona to California, Colorado, out to East Coast, Seattle, like you're in this constant traveling. And if you know more about some of the local events, then maybe that alleviates some of the travel, or even funds the travel. If you want to go to those big events, like having a one-day show where you make maybe $1,000, there you go. It covers your gas and your hotel for that bigger event that you really want to go to.
Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the ways to make it accessible. Actually, it's not just to make it free for the visitors, it's to make it affordable for the vendors to actually come to the con and to live without risking the rent money and stuff. Like, that shouldn't be the case. You mentioned some of the ways that the Comic-Con is accessible, and Comic-Cons in general are very safe spaces, like very safe third places in which all of us can enjoy and show our true selves and be accepted for who we are and what we love without any prejudice and stuff like that. But what are some of the ways that you're making sure that you're nurturing that type of space so that people can actually feel that way? And what are some of the advices that you might have for people who have never been to a Comic-Con? Because there are some like rules of being polite at Comic-Cons that are different than maybe some other events.
Especially if you're going to an Indigenous Comic Con, like we're definitely doing some posters that talk about costumes, because there's like that lovely little thin line between appreciation and appropriation, and there's certain characters that you can cosplay, but certain characters you really should not. Most fictional characters are yes. So if you do Moana, if you do like Danny Moonstar, Echo, like that's a character who just happens to be Indigenous, and that's fine to cosplay. Pocahontas is a no-no, just in general, because she's not fictional. And I know the Disney version is like fictional, but she's not. She's based on, one of the first missing and murdered Indigenous women. And she was like kidnapped as a 12-year-old and raped and basically forced to have children and died at the age of 22. So it is a super tragic, really heartbreaking story that most people feel in their core. So you just want to avoid dressing as Pocahontas at all costs anytime, because it is a trigger. It's major trigger warning. We do have some things that are going around like poster wise that we'll be releasing here shortly, but they're also going to be up at the con that just kind of talks about what to do with a costume, like how to really look at the difference between putting a cultural twist on a character and then making a mockery of a character. And also, cosplay does not equal consent. Just because a girl is dressed really sexy, like, does not mean you can touch her, does not mean you can take a picture without her permission. And kind of the same with our dancers. You know, we have a lot of performances, which is unique to most Comic Cons. They don't really have like dance performances. We have people in their regalia and like taking a picture of the dance is fine. But, you know, if after the dance, you might want to go up and ask permission before you start like following them around and snapping pictures and trying to touch them. That's the big thing. For some reason, people always feel like because dancers are there dressed up, they're like, okay, they're part of the art. I can touch them. I can come up and grab their hair or grab their shawl and just like they're public property. And to me, that always cracks me up because I'm like, what? Would you do that to like a ballet dancer? Would you seriously walk up to a ballet dancer and like grab her tutu and be like, oh, I love your tutu? Like, you know, ask a bunch of weird questions. I used to work at the Denver Art Museum. And one of the funniest moments for us, we had an event that is called Untitled. They happen like 4 times out of the year. And during my fellowship there, I brought in a lot of Indigenous people for a lot of those. And one of them, we had dancers performing for a fashion show. And they had, you know, their dressing room. And these people just walked into the dressing room and like watched them get ready. Like these visitors for the like art museum just opened the door and just like browsed around the dressing room while people were getting dressed. And I had to go in there and like kick them out. It was like, I was in total shock because I was like, what, who does that? Why would you do that? And so that's kind of what we operate off of with áyA is like aware of that there's kind of a fine line between curiosity and obviously stepping over a line. You don't want to go take pictures of people getting dressed. So we have places for like our dancers to change. We've got a prop check in the front that will be checking cosplay props to make sure that nobody brings a real weapon, because unfortunately we do live in that world. So checking to make sure that all of that is good. We've got security, and we'll have the posters around. We have an elevator for people that are in wheelchairs or can't walk up all the stairs. They can come up on the elevator into the various spaces. And we have a quiet room in case people get a little overwhelmed with social anxiety or just with the craziness of everything, because the world is crazy these days. And so we try to make it as accessible and just as safe as possible. Of course, there's always going to be things that slip through the cracks, because unfortunately, that's just the way the world is, and especially when you have a large event. With it being free to attend, I'm not sure how many people will be around, but we've really talked to our staff, and we're going to have a check-in meeting to go over all of the safety procedures again just before the convention happens, and really prepare as much as we can. It's like being a parent, you know, like you could just do as much as you can and then just hope for the best.
Yeah, but sometimes people are unpredictable and stuff can happen, but you can do the most to just prepare for that. And yeah, I love that you have that quiet space, because it can get very loud, it can get very busy, and you know, it can be just a lot. So having that place to go to and just decompress a little bit and then go back refreshed, it's amazing, and it can help some people, and especially children might have sensory issues. It's amazing that they have a safe space for them to, you know, just be actually safe, and then come back to all the fun and all the joy. What are some of the events at the con that you're especially looking forward to? I know that you shouldn't have the favorites. It's like the event is all yours, but I'm sure that there are some stuff that you're like really like proud and super happy to see when it will be happening.
Well, I'm always excited about seeing what the novice artists bring, just because it's their first con. So it's really cool to see them bring all of their supplies and merchandise and like really just take that first step as an artist. That's like really important to me. So obviously that's a major highlight. On Saturday, we have a ribbon skirt contest. And so if you can't cosplay or don't have like the things for cosplay, but you make ribbon skirts, that's a really awesome thing to join in on. It's sponsored by Colorado Native Organization. They've got some really exciting prizes. It's just kind of a fun take on it. People can show up in all different types of ribbon skirts and get a prize for it. One of the sponsors this year was Scholastic, and it's actually kind of, again, synergies actually worked out perfect. The book that they gave us to give away to kids is ribbon skirt. And so it just kind of like aligned really well together. And we will be giving away those books as different prizes for people to do. There's a lot of little fun kind of like scavenger hunt type of things that people can participate in to get prizes. We'll give away those books. And then on Saturday night, there is our Futures and Fashion Showcase, which is definitely by far one of my favorite things about áyA. We open it with a two-spirit drag performance by the Indigenous House of Barbie. And they're always amazing. They started with us back in IPX days, and so in 2019, and they've kind of come every year since then. So they'll be opening up. We've got a really great performance that are happening during that fashion show, and about 8 different designers. The return of Sunrose Ironshell, who's an Indigenous designer that was doing fashion for a bit, and then she was retired for a little bit, and this is her return to runway. So that's really exciting. That whole thing is just a lot of fun because it's dressed to impress. We've got every ticket, you get a free drink. The only ticketed part of áyA is that fashion show. It's kind of like our fundraiser. Our drink provider is Coco, and they actually do mocktails. So the other big thing about áyA is it's a dry event. We don't have any alcohol. They're providing 2 fall-themed mocktails, which I'm a total Halloween nerd and a major like fall fan. So I'm really excited about those mocktails because they sound delicious. So they're providing 2 fall-themed mocktails and coffee and tea. And that's what people will have if they buy just any kind of ticket. But our VIP ticket is really cool because one of our vendors actually contributed to the VIP gift. It's a copper bracelet that emulates our logo, and his bracelets are amazing. We're actually going to be coming out with a little video to explain them shortly here, so that when people are getting the VIP ticket, they know what they're really getting with that bracelet. He just puts a lot of thought and meaning behind all of the symbols that he uses. And it's a limited edition bracelet. It will only be sold for áyA Futures and Fashion VIP, and that's it. It'll be retired right after the show. So there's only about 100 of them. So if you want VIP, that's it, you gotta get that ticket because it's a really great gift to have. On Sunday, we have a cosplay contest that's sponsored by Meow Wolf. And I've got about 3 cosplay judges that are from all kind of different walks of life. So I'm really excited to see what they kind of come up with for the winners of that cosplay contest. But it is $500 for the first place with Meow Wolf tickets, $300 for second place with Meow Wolf tickets, and then $100 for third place with Meow Wolf tickets. And then we even have a kids costume contest that has toys that they win toys and then Meow Wolf tickets for those. The first 2 places are Meow Wolf tickets, and then the third place is like a prize pack. But that way littles can kind of participate. I know my son is really big on dressing up in costumes. And so he gets kind of bummed when they're like, oh, 6-year-olds can't compete in this cosplay contest. Because he went to Denver Fan Expo. We made a giant like operating Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, and he was inside of it and he operated it. He definitely was a highlight of Denver Fan Expo. Everybody was like taking pictures and really excited because he did the puppet perfect. Like he did a whole lip sync. It's on my Instagram if you want to go see it. He's really big about being able to like compete in those things. He loves costumes and puppets, and not being able to do that in a lot of places is kind of tough for him because they'll do like kids costume parades, but they won't do like a contest. And so we have a kids contest for that one. But those are kind of the big highlights that I'm excited about. All of our panels are going to be great. We have a Surviving the Zombie Apocalypse Red Style by Joni J happening on Saturday, and Indigenous Horror happening on Saturday as well. So we've got a kind of a spooky element because of Halloween. All of our t-shirts this year glow in the dark, again, because of Halloween. So you can get an áyA t-shirt that glows in the dark. We also have a special edition Indigenous Horror t-shirt that glows in the dark designed by artist Crystal Wilson. And it's a cool t-shirt. It's a Wendigo. It's a really it's on red. I'll be posting that on our Instagram shortly here too. So it's great to pay attention to our Instagram because as we lead up, I'm starting to drop more and more things about the festival that's happening, things to look forward to. So we'll have that bracelet video and kind of talking about the meaning behind that. And then we'll have more of the designers. There's 2 of our designers for the fashion show that are highlighted up there now, and everybody else will get a little highlight post, and then we'll be kind of repping those t-shirts coming up pretty soon here. So lots of updates as we lead up.
Oh, I mean, it's amazing. I'm so sorry that I'm not closer to Denver, so that I can actually go there and visit all of this and experience it all, because it sounds like so much fun. A lot of very different things for like different people with different interests. I love that you're very inclusive when it comes to the kids, because this continent is not very kid friendly most of the times, especially with different types of events, and that in the same time you're also, you know, alcohol free, which is also something that's not very often offered to people who might not want to indulge in alcohol. So it's amazing that you're providing such space and, you know, showing a way that everything can be just as fun and just as amazing and just as a tasty drink without having any alcohol in it. So that's great. You also mentioned those limited edition bracelets, which are very fun, and I'm sure that they're amazing. So can you tell us a little bit more about the logo that you designed for the áyA Comic Con and the name itself? What does it mean? And I mean, we've seen through the things that you just said about what the event embodies and what the values of the event are, but what are the connections between the way that the Comic-Con is set up and the name and the idea of the whole thing?
Definitely. So the logo is it's a raven or crow flying into a sun, and around the sun is people. So the rays are made out of like people, and then the interior of the sun is kind of a bunch of like art supplies. And so I've got like game controllers on there, also with like comic books and pencils and spray cans, and really just to represent all of the interests and nerdiness around art and comics and games and the things that, you know, are really like the center of áyA, aside from those values of like cultural values. And the reason it's a raven is because, you know, in Lakota, we look at like ravens are one of the only birds that fly through a storm instead of away from it. And so they're very resilient. They're usually flying towards the sun. And so it's kind of like flying towards a new day, towards like new hope. And that's actually the name áyA is Lakota, meaning to change or to become. And so it's kind of a way of like, we're changing into becoming a better way of being. That's the purpose behind the logo and the whole name and everything.
That's beautiful. And you're also a finalist currently for the Powwow pitch. What dreams now seem more closer than ever thanks to this moment that you're experiencing right now?
Create áyA is the nonprofit that we created to be able to do áyA. We've always kind of bounced around this idea of how we really support artists. And we did a publishing company just before COVID, and it was going pretty well, but then obviously all of our income was basically based on traveling to conventions and to festivals. And so when COVID hit, we lost all sense of income. And so we had to close the doors for our áyA Studios, which was the publishing company. And so my husband and I were kind of bouncing around, like, what are ways that we can still support artists without having to rely on that model of going to all of these festivals and stuff, especially because, like I mentioned, 6-year-old, so you can't drive all over the country now that he's in school and everything. So áyA kind of with the arts aspect of it and the vendors, we realized, like, well, what if we did a makerspace where people could come and use those resources? Because obviously that novice artist program is really important to me. And they could have a place to come to have some professional guidance and be able to have access to resources to build their own practices. And so we actually we have a location for the makerspace thanks to one of our partnerships with Redline Contemporary Art Center. So we have a makerspace now. I've already had 2 meetings in there, one with the novice artists and then one with an elder, actually, who this will be his first time doing a festival. And he's in his 80s. I had him come into the Denver Art Museum for an elder art show last year, and it was his first time showing his artwork in his whole life, and he's really amazing. His detail is great, and he's constantly working on them. And this will be the first time he's selling things in a festival setting. So I had him in the makerspace, and we were taking pictures of his paintings and kind of talking about ways that we can do prints and stuff so that he can have his booth. And so it's really, even though it doesn't have any of the equipment yet, because it's all sitting in my mailroom right now, we got it all delivered and haven't gotten a chance to set it up yet. But even just having the space has already made a huge impact on what we can do to support artists and support our local community. And where our makerspace is located is actually within a building that is for 18 to 25-year-olds experiencing homelessness through substance abuse or foster care. And so they actually will have free access into the makerspace. They'll only have to pay for materials, but we plan to do a lot of skill building with them to help with any kind of careers they might want to go on, because really art is at the center of everything. So if you know how to make a flyer and you're working an office job, they're going to go to you to make a flyer. They're going to be really excited that you can make a flyer for something. You know, we'll have 3D printing and dye sublimation and all of these things that people can do to create product. And the goal for that really is so that people can test out those products without having to spend thousands of dollars to test it out. Because I know I've definitely had that where I'm like, oh yeah, I think I want to do this. And then you buy like $1,000 printer thinking you're going to use it a lot. And then you use it once and you're like, yeah, maybe that doesn't work. And so then you have to figure out how to resell it, or it just sits there and collects dust. And so having a place to come for the makerspace, people can learn how to operate those machines, see if it really works for their business, for what they want to do as a vendor. And if it does, then they can invest in it. And now they know what kind of machine works. They might know to look for a better machine, or they might decide like, okay, I got to test out doing like cups, and maybe they didn't sell as well as I thought they were going to. So it's not going to be a long-term investment for me. But it's opportunities for them to kind of build that without having to end up in the hole, because that can shut down your business pretty quick. So Powwow Pitches really helps with that. Also, it's drawn a lot of people over to áyA. It's kind of put a big like light bulb over us. So that's been great. I'm really honored that I'm a finalist. I was actually in shock. I was like, what? No way. Are you serious? That's amazing. Like, there were so many finalists this year that were just, everybody had great ideas. Everyone was on fire. So I do not envy the judges for the finals, because all of my finalists, all my co-finalists, I'm like, can we just fund all of us? Because everybody is doing amazing work, and everything needs to be like supported. So I don't envy the judges. It's tough because the whole roster of finalists is all just doing great things that need to be paid attention to.
Yeah, everybody deserves a chance. So people in charge should, make the budgets bigger so that you can all get your chance that you all deserve, because I'm sure that all the other projects are just as brilliant as your own. And I'm not shocked that you're among the finalists because of all the things that you just told us about, all the passion that you told it with. You deserve it, and I hope that it will be, even if you do not win, that many great things will come out of it. Do you know when you will find out who wins?
Finals are live streaming on October 23rd, and I think during that live stream is when they do the little like announcement of who wins. The finals actually are, this is kind of crazy. So the finals take place the day before áyA. So I will be doing my powwow pitch literally the evening before the first day of áyA. And then the finals live stream for everybody on October 23rd, and that's when we'll find out who won. So yeah.
That's amazing. Fun fact, October 23rd is my day of submitting my comprehensive exams for my PhD. So I will be free actually to watch them and cheer you on. So that's amazing. If you ever plan to make a comic book about you, your husband, and your child, and all of the adventures that you have together, what would it be called? What would be your superhero names?
I'm not sure. It's kind of, I have joked that someone needs to make a sitcom based off of our life, because especially with my car situations, because I got car karma from my father. So my dad has the worst car karma ever. And he always says, that electronics and cars like tend to glitch around people with a lot like high spiritual energy. And my dad's a spiritual leader, and yeah, it's like the amount of ridiculousness that happens with cars is really kind of funny. And then, there's a lot of moments in my life, especially, that just kind of happen or are kind of crazy. My mom recently referred to it as it's like I'm surfing. It's just like constantly barrel rolls, and I get back up on the board, and I was like, yeah, that's just kind of normal. But I think it would make a pretty entertaining like sitcom or comedy comic, just to look at the ridiculousness that happens, that is life, and you just get back up on the board. So I don't know. I'm not sure what I would make out of a superhero of that. I think my son would definitely be something with creatures, because he's kind of obsessed with teeth. Like, that's why as a 6-year-old, he loves Audrey too. And like, he's counting down the days because Little Shop of Horrors is coming to Denver. And every morning he's like, is today the day? And I'm like, it's not till April. You still have Halloween, you still have your birthday, you still have Christmas. Like, there's a lot of things that you can be excited about. Not yes, be excited about Little Shop of Horrors, but you got till April. You have almost a year until Little Shop of Horrors gets here. But he's obsessed with that, and puppets and dinosaurs and sharks. And my mom basically said she's never sleeping in his bedroom because everything has teeth, and Ghostbusters, and actually his Halloween costume this year is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But he decided that he also wanted an Audrey 2. So now his trick-or-treat bag, we made it into an Audrey 2 puppet, and people can feed Audrey 2, and it goes into the bottom, but it's Audrey 2 sticking out of a popcorn bucket. So his killer clown can carry his Audrey 2 with popcorn, and he can do that whole thing. But he had a whole story for it, because he was like, okay, so then the clowns came to Earth and they turned Seymour into cotton candy, and then that's how they got Audrey 2. And so he has this whole like backstory for how his little killer clown got Audrey 2 in the first place. So definitely something with storytelling, I think, is a big deal, because all three of us are storytellers. My husband's working on a couple comics that are around that, kind of seeing Indigenous people in superhero lights, and he's got a lot of really great stories. That's why he wasn't able to join us today. He's got some deadlines coming up, and obviously with áyA coming up, he's trying to get those deadlines done as quickly as possible so that he doesn't have to do any of the work during áyA.
If you want to, you could send me the links to both of your stuff so that I can share it with people, because as I gathered, you work on commissions too.
A lot of comic commissions, and he's basically a full-time comic artist. I do a lot of logo designs, so I love doing like logos and graphic designs for people. So that's usually what I do in terms of commissions. Kind of moving away from the comics, because they do take a while. So I'm my husband's colorist, so I do all the colors for his comics, but my own comics, I've kind of moved on to being able to collaborate with other artists, and maybe I'll contribute some like the cover or story, but I don't do as much of the interiors as I used to.
So we have this segment, Feminist Recommends. If you have any comics, any movies, music, things that you love to do that bring you joy, that make you, happy and relaxed and escape from all of the horrible stuff that's happening in the world right now.
Pretty much everything that we've talked about, like doing events and being out in community, is a really big thing for me. It's a way that I can kind of decompress, but also I love being able to build connections, and I feel like regenerated when I am able to like talk with other people and just feel that excitement for what they've got going on too. One of the things I'm really excited about coming out is actually a comic by Jill Thompson. It's Scary Godmother, which I loved growing up. It's one of my favorite comics because it's basically like all about Halloween, and she's got some craft things in there. She had 2 films that came out that were on Cartoon Network at the time, and she's releasing a whole anthology of all of the stories. So it's called This Is Your Childhood, Scary Godmother. And it comes out on October 15th, so you can pre-order it now. I'm like counting down days for that because I have her little Kickstarter doll that she did for Scary Godmother. And the whole point of the story started out as like she made a comic to help her goddaughter deal with like being afraid of monsters. And you know, her scary godmother is very similar to how she looks, like a witch with like curly red hair. And now she's got white hair because she's gotten older, but she has really fun little tips and tricks about Halloween in there. So there's like craft tips, there's little snacks that you can make, and then each story and the characters is just the total essence of Halloween. And so I just love that whole story. I'm really excited to have the anthology because my son also loves those stories, so I can share it with him. And we're going to read over them. He's, of course, obsessed with Bugaboo, which is the one with all the teeth and the eyes, because then that's his jam. So of all of the characters, that's the one he likes, is the teeth and the eye monster. So
yeah, stories have that power sometimes to help us confront the fears that we might have and grow past them, no matter how old we are. Like fairy tales are not just for kids, for bedtime story, they're not just for the adults or just for the elderly, they're for everybody. And that's one of the ways to share the knowledge and the wisdoms of the generations, and you know, actually learn some stuff together through a very fun way. So I love it. We're nearing the end. I have one last question for you, and that is if you have any calls for action, any messages for the audience, anything that you would like to repeat that you already said, or just call people to come to the con. Now is the moment for it.
Come to áyA if you are able to. It's going to be a great time. If you are in the United States, vote. Please vote. But definitely, like, those are the two big things. Come to áyA and vote.
I love it. I think you've said enough with those two stuff. Like, have fun, but also make sure that you're safe and that everything is fine.
That we can continue having this event and not be, deported to some country we are not from. So.
Yeah, literally, the episode that came out before this one was with a US immigration lawyer who has seen and experienced a lot of stuff herself when it comes to this. And we also talked about the importance of voting and making sure that you're voting your actual interests and not the interest that somebody tells you that might be your interest. Because none of us will benefit from tax breaks for the rich. Like none of us belong to that bracket. So why would you vote for somebody who wants that?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of that here for sure. That's kind of why I'm like, vote, and maybe actually take some time to research and double check what you are agreeing to and choosing, because what it all comes down to is life is full of choices, and that's really the only thing you have power over is your choice. So you want to make sure you know what your choice is before you just decide, oh, my mom's voting for this person, so I'm going to vote for this person. Like, no. Do your research.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, it's very important to do it. Thank you so much for being here today with me, for talking about your Comic-Con. Thank you so much for even organizing it, for being that change in your community and inspiring so many people around the country, around the world, who might see what you do and see that you do it with so much passion and so much love, and that they might turn and try to do something similar in their own local communities, because that's the most beautiful thing that can come out of any type of event. I hope that you will have a lot of fun on the Comic-Con. I hope it will be like the best Comic-Con that you have yet been. That you will find many amazing things, that people will come from all over the place and enjoy it. And forget about all the struggles that we might experience in everyday life, because in spaces like Comic-Cons we can show up as ourselves and be respected for that, and show respect to others who are doing the same, and that's beautiful.
Well said. You feel free to reach out. Anybody has any questions or needs anything, thank you for taking the time for interviewing and spreading the word. But as I mentioned, we're always open to, if you want to start your own Comic-Con and you have questions about like things that we did or that we learned, we're open books. So
yeah, we'll put the information for the website and for the social media accounts so that people can find you more easily. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.
That will be all for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching this. Thank you, Kristina, once again for being here today with me to talk about your con, for even doing that con, because it sounds so amazing and I'm so jealous that I can't be there. If you enjoyed watching this, make sure to leave a like and maybe even subscribe so you miss on any future episodes that might be just as fun and exciting and unique as this one. But please feel free to share your own thoughts, opinions and experiences in the comments down below, but make sure to do it, respectfully and as kindly as you can be, so that this can also be a safe space that all of us can enjoy, because we all have a right for it. I will see you some other time. Bye!